Remember the days when your biggest worry was beating your friends at Pac-Man? The 80s were a golden era for gaming, both at arcades and at home. Pac-Man, the simple yet addictive maze-chasing game, captured everyone's attention. It wasn't just a game, it was an entire cultural phenomenon. Did you spend countless quarters in front of that glowing screen? You weren't alone. Every kid, every teen, was hooked on trying to set that high score. But did you ever get frustrated when that darn ghost cornered you? Then came Super Mario Bros. With its iconic jumping plumber. Mario was the hero we never knew we needed, yet couldn't stop loving. Jumping from platform to platform, dodging Goombas, it was a dream. No one forgets the sound of those Super Mario theme songs. You could play it for hours with your friends cheering you on. And who could forget that final jump to save Princess Peach? Super Mario made us feel like we were part of something bigger. But the board games of the 80s had their own charm. Clue, for example, brought us together for a classic whodunit. With its sleek design and ever-mysterious murders, who didn't love it? Was it Colonel Mustard in the study, or Professor Plum in the library? The thrill of deduction kept us hooked, searching for clues in every corner. The best part? The aha moment when you solved the mystery. There was no better feeling than being the first to announce the murderer. And let's not forget Monopoly, the game that ruined friendships. It was all fun and games until someone started hoarding properties. No one was safe from that Monopoly deal-breaker mentality, the thrill of controlling Boardwalk or the dread of landing on it, the hours you spent negotiating, trading, and making deals. Sure, it got heated, but that was part of the excitement, right? The real victory wasn't the game, it was the bragging rights after winning. Then there was the legendary Tetris, the game that tested your patience. The falling blocks seemed so simple, yet they became an endless puzzle. It was a test of how fast and how far you could go. That music, now etched in our memories, forever linked with Tetris. You'd find yourself playing just one more round, saying, "Just one more," and somehow hours would disappear in that quest for the perfect stack. How many times did you reach for the next line to complete? Then there were the classic sports games, like Intellivision's baseball. It might look simple now, but back then it was a game changer. Gathering your friends to play was always a blast, especially those intense matches. The graphics might have been blocky, but the excitement was real. And those multiplayer games were what made summer afternoons unforgettable. Intellivision's games made you feel like you were part of the action. Do you remember feeling like a pro after hitting a home run? Of course, we can't forget the excitement of laser tag. Laser tag was more than just a game. It was an adventure. You'd grab your gear, rush to your friend's house, and plan the perfect attack. The glow in the dark targets, the lasers shooting across the room, it was magical. Laser tag let you pretend to be in a futuristic battle. The adrenaline rush of outsmarting your friends and winning was priceless. Do you ever wish you could just relive one of those epic battles? Meanwhile, the tabletop game Dungeons & Dragons began to gain a cult following. Dungeons & Dragons was more than just dice and miniatures. It was storytelling, the magic of creating characters and embarking on adventures with friends. Hours would fly by as you navigated through dungeons, facing mythical creatures. The shared experiences of overcoming challenges together built lifelong friendships. It was a game that allowed your imagination to run wild. Remember the joy of discovering new worlds and writing your own hero's tale? And how could we forget the board game Risk, where world domination was the goal? Risk was a battle of strategy, alliances, and sometimes betrayal. Taking over continents, fortifying armies, it was a game of ultimate control. The excitement of taking your turn, moving armies across the board. It wasn't just about luck, it was about thinking ahead, outsmarting your rivals. The tension was always high, especially when someone was about to conquer Europe. Did you play Risk as a family tradition or with a competitive group of friends? Speaking of competition, remember the intense rivalry over the Atari 2600? Atari was where it all started for home gaming systems. Whether it was Space Invaders, Asteroids, or Pitfall, Atari had it all. There were no fancy graphics, just pure fun, fast-paced action, the joy of getting your hands on the joystick and going for a high score. Who didn't dream of owning the best Atari games? The excitement of competing with your friends was the heart of the 80s gaming era. And let's not forget about the unforgettable adventures of Zelda. The Legend of Zelda brought us into a world filled with mystery and magic. Link, the brave hero, set out on his quest to save Princess Zelda. The exploration, the puzzles, and the excitement of battling enemies were thrilling. That iconic music will forever bring back memories of our childhood. With every dungeon conquered, we felt more like a part of that world. Did you ever get lost in the vastness of Hyrule, trying to find your way? Of course, the 80s also gave us the rise of arcade culture. Arcades were the places to be, filled with flashing lights and game sounds. You'd gather your quarters and dive into games like Galaga and Dig Dug. The challenge was always to beat the high scores posted on the walls. It wasn't just about the games, it was about the atmosphere and the excitement. Did you ever have a favorite arcade that you visited every weekend? Arcades were more than just a place to play. They were a social hub. Remember those crazy hours spent playing Battletoads with friends? Battletoads was known for its insane difficulty and over-the-top action. From the crazy bike levels to the insane bosses, every moment was a challenge. It was one of those games that made you want to throw your controller. But the satisfaction of completing each level was unmatched. And the over-the-top humor in its cutscenes kept you laughing along the way. Do you still remember the thrill of taking down the massive bosses? Then there was the revolutionary world of the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES. The NES changed the landscape of gaming and brought countless classics. It introduced us to franchises like Super Mario, Metroid, and Mega Man. Each game was a new adventure, with fresh challenges and hidden secrets. The controller might have been simple, but the experiences were endless. Playing on the NES felt like a rite of passage for every 80s kid. Which NES game was your favorite to play with your friends or family? And let's not forget about those rainy afternoons spent playing Scrabble. Scrabble was the ultimate word game, testing your vocabulary and strategy. The thrill of placing that perfect word on a triple-word score was unmatched. Scrabble wasn't just about words. It was about bragging rights. There was something so satisfying about pulling off a high-scoring word. Every letter, every tile had to be carefully considered for the best play. Do you remember the most impressive word you ever played on the board? Of course, we can't forget the legendary game of Trivial Pursuit. This trivia game had us all feeling like experts in various categories. Every question was a challenge, especially those tough ones in the arts and literature category. The excitement of filling in your pie pieces was so rewarding, competing with friends to see who could answer the most questions correctly. Trivial Pursuit wasn't just about knowledge, it was about bragging rights too. Did you ever have that one friend who always seemed to know all the answers? Speaking of competition, how about Pictionary, where drawing skills were put to the test? Pictionary turned every party into a hilarious, chaotic battle of creativity. Trying to draw the Eiffel Tower with just a few quick strokes? Challenge accepted. It didn't matter if your art skills were terrible. It was all about having fun. You'd watch your teammates struggle to guess the ridiculous images you drew. The laughter was non-stop as everyone tried to make sense of the sketches. Do you remember that one round where you just couldn't stop laughing? Let's not forget about the classic Operation game. It was nerve-wracking and required the steadiest of hands. The buzz of the buzzer was enough to make anyone sweat. Removing the funny, wacky body parts without setting off the buzzer was pure tension. Operation taught us all how hard it is to be a surgeon. But who didn't love that? Triumphant moment when you pulled off a perfect operation? Do you remember the excitement of getting the funny doctor with no buzzer? Then there was the game of life. A game that simulated our future, in the 80s. Life wasn't just a game. It was a journey of choices, from college to career. The spinner would decide your fate, whether you ended up a millionaire or a struggling artist. It was a snapshot of what we imagined our lives would be like someday. The excitement of collecting money, buying a house, and taking the family route was endless. But it wasn't all about the money. It was about the fun of the game. Did you ever win big, or were you the one who ended up in debt? Let's talk about the Rubik's Cube, the puzzle that drove us all crazy. The Rubik's Cube seemed impossible at first, but that made it all the more intriguing. We all tried our best to solve it, one twist at a time. Some of us were hooked for hours trying to match those colorful squares. The feeling of solving it was pure satisfaction, like a personal victory. But no matter how hard you tried, it always seemed to get mixed up again. Were you one of the lucky few who solved it in record time? How about Tamagotchis, those little digital pets that we all became obsessed with? We'd feed them, clean them, and make sure they didn't die on our watch. It was like having a pet without the actual mess or responsibility. The constant need for attention made us feel like we were taking care of something important. And let's not forget the panic when you accidentally forgot to feed them. Tamagotchis became a huge part of childhood, making every day an adventure. Did you have one that you took absolutely everywhere with you? Then there were the action figures that helped bring our favorite movies and cartoons to life. He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers. Each one was an action-packed story waiting to unfold. You could create entire worlds just by setting up your figures in different positions. The coolest part was mixing and matching characters from different franchises. Who said G.I. Joe couldn't join forces with Optimus Prime? Our imaginations knew no limits, and these action figures were our tools for creation. Do you remember the excitement of showing off your new action figure to friends? And we can't talk about the 80s without mentioning E.T. the Extraterrestrial for the Atari. While not the greatest game, it was certainly one of the most memorable. It was a huge part of the E.T. movie hype, despite its questionable gameplay. The quest to find pieces of the phone to phone home was oddly engaging. But the real mystery, the millions of unsold E.T. cartridges buried in a desert. The game's failure didn't stop us from playing it, though, did it? What are your memories of trying to escape from the Atari's E.T.? Duck Hunt was another classic that had us hooked with its light gun controller. The idea of shooting down ducks on screen while aiming with a real gun-shaped controller was revolutionary. It was pure 80s fun, simple, but exciting. Who didn't try to cheat by shooting the dog when he laughed at you? The satisfaction of hitting that last duck in the air was unmatched. For a while, we all thought we were sharpshooters, at least in the game world. Do you still remember the frustration of missing that one duck at the end? Don't forget about Frogger, the ultimate test of timing and reflexes. You had to guide your frog across a busy street and a river filled with hazards. It was all about quick thinking and split-second decisions. Every time you got hit by a car or fell into the water, you wanted to try again. The excitement was real as you navigated the frog through levels of increasing difficulty. Frogger taught us patience and precision, skills that served us well in later games. Do you ever look back and smile at how frustratingly addictive that little frog was? Then there was the thrill of playing Contra, the ultimate co-op shooter. With its intense action and challenging levels, Contra became an 80s arcade staple. The best part? The cheat code. Up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start. It was a game that tested both your reflexes and your teamwork. You and a friend battling through enemy soldiers, aliens, and explosive environments. The adrenaline rush was unforgettable, and the sense of accomplishment was pure magic. Who else remembers that feeling of triumph when you beat the game with a friend? Another unforgettable game was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, where boxing came to life. You controlled Little Mac as he fought his way up through the ranks. Each fight was more challenging than the last, with colorful and quirky opponents. The thrill of dodging punches and landing the perfect blow kept us coming back. And the ultimate challenge? Mike Tyson himself, undefeated and nearly impossible to beat. Punch-Out! Wasn't just about boxing, It was about perseverance and timing. Do you remember the excitement or dread of facing off against Mike Tyson? Asteroids was another arcade classic that kept us glued to the screen. The concept was simple. Destroy asteroids and avoid being destroyed yourself. But the sheer speed of the game and the challenge of controlling your ship made it addicting. It was one of those games where every second felt like life or death. The sound of the spaceship firing lasers and the asteroids exploding will never be forgotten. It was a game of survival, precision, and reflexes. How many times did you find yourself getting sucked into that vortex of asteroids? Of course, Pac-Man deserves another mention, because let's be real, it was everywhere. It was one of the most iconic games to come out of the 80s. Chasing pellets, avoiding ghosts, and trying to clear each level felt like an endless challenge. Every time Pac-Man ate a power pellet and turned the tables on the ghosts, it was pure joy. The simple but catchy soundtrack will forever be tied to memories of those arcade days. Pac-Man wasn't just a game. It was a cultural moment. How many times did you hear the Waka Waka sound and feel a rush of nostalgia? Let's not forget the Atari 2600 and the games it brought into our homes. It was one of the first home consoles bringing arcade action to our living rooms. From Pitfall to Space Invaders, Atari opened the door for home gaming. We didn't need an arcade anymore. We could play these classics at home. Atari 2600 made us realize that we could be gamers anytime, anywhere. It was a game changer in every sense of the word. Do you still have fond memories of those early Atari days? Then there was Adventure on the Atari 2600, one of the earliest action-adventure games. Adventure was simple but groundbreaking, with its maze-like environments and treasure hunting. You'd control a little square avatar, exploring castles, dungeons, and avoiding dragons. It was one of the first games to feature an Easter egg, something we'd all later hunt for in other games. The thrill of finding secret rooms and hidden treasures was unlike anything before. In many ways, Adventure started the trend of exploration and mystery in gaming. How many of you spent hours trying to figure out the hidden Easter egg? Another legendary game was DuckTales, inspired by the beloved Disney show. Exploring the world as Scrooge McDuck, collecting treasures and battling enemies was pure joy. The soundtrack was unforgettable. The Moon. Theme still gives us chills. The game's levels were diverse, taking us on adventures from the jungle to the moon. It was a mix of platforming, treasure hunting, and puzzle solving. The thrill of collecting coins and solving mysteries with Scrooge McDuck was unmatched. Who remembers dancing to the catchy DuckTales theme song every time you won a level? Then there was the Nerf craze, with all those foam blasters that took over backyard battles. The Nerf blasters weren't just toys. They were our weapons of choice in our childhood wars. We'd form teams, set up barricades, and challenge each other in epic battles. The fun was in the strategy. Where would you hide, and which blaster would you choose? The thrill of launching foam darts across the yard and trying to hit your target was exhilarating. We were the kings and queens of backyard combat, armed with nothing but foam. Do you still have a Nerf blaster hidden somewhere in your garage? Another childhood memory was Simon, the electronic memory game that challenged our minds. Simon tested your ability to remember and repeat the flashing color patterns. It seemed so simple at first, but as the patterns got longer, so did the challenge. The beeping sounds and flashing lights were addictive, making you want to go further. It was one of the first handheld electronic games that made us feel like tech experts. With each round, you pushed your memory to the limit, hoping to break your record. Who remembers the feeling of pride when you completed the longest pattern? Lastly, Super Mario Bros. Wasn't just a game. It was a revolution. It introduced us to the world of platforming in ways we never thought possible. Every jump, every power-up felt like a small victory, inching us closer to the goal. The joy of hitting blocks and discovering hidden worlds was pure magic. We spent hours playing Super Mario Bros. The Crew, knowing that we were part of something special. Its impact on gaming is still felt today as it set the standard for platformers. What's your favorite Super Mario memory? Was it a particular level or a power-up you loved? Looking back, the 80s were a golden era for gaming, both digital and physical. It was a time when every game, whether in an arcade or on a console, felt like an adventure. We didn't just play games, we lived them, becoming heroes, adventurers, and puzzle solvers. From the board games we gathered around to play with family, to the arcades with friends, the memories we made are timeless, imprinted in our minds forever. The thrill of beating a game, the challenge of solving a puzzle, those moments defined our childhood. What games still have a special place in your heart from those unforgettable 80s days? Whether it was the high-energy action of Pac-Man or the strategic depth of Risk, the 80s taught us that games were more than just entertainment. They were an experience. It was about coming together with friends, challenging each other, and laughing through the highs and lows. Some games, like Super Mario Bros., became part of our cultural fabric, never to be forgotten. While technology has changed, the joy of gaming, the excitement, the challenge, remains timeless. We owe a lot to the 80s for shaping the world of gaming as we know it today. So, which 80s game brings back the most memories for you? If you were there, you know exactly what I mean. The adrenaline, the competition, the camaraderie. Those games weren't just fun. They were milestones in our childhoods. We had our favorite titles, those games that we could never get tired of playing. The good news is, those games are still here today in various forms, from remakes to virtual versions. They continue to capture our imaginations. The 80s gaming era lives on in our hearts and on our screens. What's one classic game you would love to see make a comeback in modern gaming? As we look back on those 80s classics, we're reminded of a time before the internet, a time when we all gathered in one place, sharing a single game, enjoying each other's company. No need for online multiplayer, just a group of friends, a board, a screen, and endless fun. Gaming in the 80s was about more than just the game itself. It was about the moments we shared. It's the kind of nostalgia that never fades. These games weren't just entertainment. They were our social glue. Which 80s game will you always associate with those carefree, unforgettable days? So here's to the 80s, to the games that shaped us, and to the memories we made. Even as technology advances, we'll always look back fondly on those simpler, unforgettable days. If you grew up in the 80s, you know that those games weren't just a pastime. They were a part of us. What we played back then helped define who we are today. So, take a moment to reminisce, relive the memories, and pass down these iconic games. Whether it's Super Mario, Risk, Tetris, or DuckTales, these games will always hold a special place in our hearts. Let's keep those memories alive and keep playing. For nostalgia's sake,